Hello, writers, and welcome to the Researchers Writing Podcast. This podcast is for all your researchers in the sciences who want to write papers in a structured and time efficient way so you can get published in top tier journals at a calm and steady pace. In this podcast, we talk about how we can write papers that are clear, concise, and compelling, and how to make the process of writing less hard. My name is Dr. Clemens, and I am an academic writing coach with a PhD in chemistry. In the Researchers Writing Academy, my online program, I've helped hundreds of researchers get their papers published in their target journals using a streamlined writing process. If you want to succeed in your academic career, mentor your students effectively, and have your research make an impact in the world, you are in the right place. Let's get into it. Hello, writers. Well, welcome back to the Researchers Writing Podcast. I'm super excited. As you can see, for those of you who are watching, I'm not alone today, but I have a guest. And yeah, I'm super excited to have Jennifer van Alstyne on the podcast today. And I'm very excited to chat about social media. I have known Jennifer for very many years, and it's been such an amazing friendship where we chat a lot about, well, running an online business in the academic field, which we both do. And I always really appreciate Jennifer's input on anything social media, anything online presence. So I thought she would be the perfect person to get on the podcast. Yeah, Jennifer, welcome. And do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer van Alstyne, and I help professors feel confident showing up online. And I think if you'd asked me this a couple of years ago, introducing myself would be more about what I do, which is help people create websites and, social media profiles and bio writing so that more people can find what they do. But it's really more about the emotional side. It's really about the
Hmm.
confidence that you do deserve that space, that when you show up, it's going to help more people, the people that you already are working to help with your research. And it's just world opening. And so, yeah, I really love what I do. I've been doing it for, oh my goodness, almost 7 years now. And
Right.
yeah, just it's fascinating to work with scientists, social scientists, researchers all around the world.
That's so cool. And I love how you shifted towards the more like emotional side of things. And I actually feel like how I talk about teaching writing, how I talk way more about these days about enjoying writing than I
Yeah.
used to. I always thought, oh well, like enjoying it is just like the cherry on top. But now I think enjoying it is the actual like that's the actual basis to it. Like that's the
Yeah.
foundation. And so now I talk about the emotional side way more as well. So that's a funny like development that we both went through apparently.
Yeah, well, I think that the emotions can either stop us or start us or make us feel more engaged in whatever we're doing. And so that
Mm.
makes so much sense that for both of us, we found this huge thing that people want to do, that people need to do for their jobs in your case, makes a big difference when we do take a moment to be introspective about those emotions.
So true. Yeah, it's so true because I think especially in the academic space, you get like thrown like, oh, here's that method, here's that technique a lot. And I think a lot of academics gravitate towards that as well, and a lot of scientists because you're just like trained to, oh, well, it's just about like knowing the stuff, right? Like once I know the thing, everything's gonna be good. But actually applying the thing, and there may be some emotions that hinder you from applying the method. Um, Play a really big role. And yeah, they may, like those emotions may keep you from actually seeing any success with any technique you're trying to learn. Well, that was a fun little excursion at the beginning of the episode. Love it. So, we are meeting today to talk about social media and how academics should show up on social media. So, actually, my first question for you is, Um, should academics be on social media?
I think that's a great question because universities would like for more academics to be on social media. Many scientists and researchers tell each other that they should be on social
Mm,
media, but the truth is it's not required. If you feel like your online presence is meeting the needs that you have for sharing your research in other ways, maybe you have a personal website, maybe you have a robust research lab website, and that's really doing the work for you and helping get the word out there. You
mm,
may not need to be on social media, but many scientists find that they want to, but they only want to be on social media in the ways that make sense for them, that make sense for their goals, that make sense for their schedules. And
mm,
that nuance is really sometimes what stops people from thinking that social media is for them. There's a lot of people who've maybe created accounts and then never kind of posted anything.
mm,
Maybe they don't even check social media often. And it's not that they shouldn't be there, it's that there's maybe even small tweaks that they can do to help more people understand and care about their research without really having to be there more. Social media can look different for you, whether you don't really want to be active, but you still want to help people with your research, or you actually enjoy social media, you want to be there, weekly or daily, and you enjoy that kind of community aspect of being online with each other. So there's a range, there's options.
mm. What would you say then, just to summarize, what are like the advantages of being on social media? You touched upon a few already, like community, sharing about your work. Like, yeah, do you see any others or
I mean,
is
there's
there like,
definitely an increase in citations kind of across fields. People have done amazing research in their respective fields about how when you post on social media about your article, it does help bring more people to the article,
Mhm,
increases citations. So I will say that that is true. It's not the reason why most scientists and researchers want to be on social media to share their research.
right.
It's more about the community aspect, meeting potential collaborators, being present and creating awareness for research funders, relating with publishers, editors, people who are journalists, people who are in the community that benefit from your research, the end user for your research potentially, if you're looking to reach that wider, more public audience. So I usually start conversations with scientists about this in terms of who they want to reach. Because if it ends up being, I don't really want to reach any of those people in this way, maybe
Mm,
it's okay if social media isn't the answer. But a lot of people get excited that potential for meeting a good collaborator or getting
mm,
good students into their research lab. There's
right.
so many possibilities that it really does take being introspective about what you want for your professional life, what you're hoping for your future, to help us have that meaningful engagement with social media once we're posting.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it always is a good idea to think about what your goals are with something before you just dive in. Yeah, makes total sense. I'm just thinking, as an academic, I mean, you're so busy, there's hardly any time left over, and then you should or should could squeeze social media in there somehow. Like, how much time do you think someone would need to invest for it to make sense? Like, is there like
Mm.
sort of a minimum time required?
That's a good question. I've never encountered anyone who has needed a minimum in the sense that like they really don't want to be on social media and even putting aside like 10 minutes of their week would be too much. And
Mm,
that's what I'm thinking. Like if you can spend 10 minutes to draft a post about your recent publication and share it, all it needs to include is what your publication is and a little bit of information about how people can find it. If you can fit that somewhere into your schedule, that's great. And it doesn't need to be every week, even if you could just do it once a month. So I guess now that I'm thinking about it, like maybe 10 minutes once a month, and it can
right.
be worth it for you. And aside from that, that's more about posting on social media, setting up your LinkedIn profile in ways that people can then find you online. I mean, your LinkedIn profile, when it's filled out, shows up at the top of search results. That's something that you could do in maybe like one afternoon, one day, and then
Mm,
have that be supporting your online presence long term. That's part of social media too. So
right.
Sometimes it's larger chunks of time that's going to set up profiles, do some kind of project like that. But
Mm,
oftentimes it's taking 10 minutes to actually sit down and draft a post. And for some people that does take longer. So I've had clients where they really do need 20, 30 minutes of focus time to start writing and to think about what they want to say, because
mm,
that's a process that makes them feel comfortable and confident to actually share it. But for some people, what's I need title, the authors, co-authors, a place of
mm,
publication, link. That's really kind of the information that you need. So if you can gather that and share that, it's going to make a big difference.
mm.
Yeah, 10 minutes once a month, I think minimum.
Okay, okay. Well, that seems really doable, I think, for
That feels
everyone.
doable. That feels doable, which is why when people think about that, and if you're pushing against it, that may be a clue for you that like social media maybe isn't for you, and that's okay too.
Yeah, that's good reminder. Yeah, and I love what you said that sometimes it's about setting up the time once so search engines can find you, your profile, so potential collaborators could find you or other people worth connecting with. Um, and it's not just about, oh, every day I have to do like a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and do you think, so if I invest 10 minutes every month, um, without having sort of built an audience, will that just like that post just fall flat? Like I think this is what a lot of kind of academics are afraid of, or people new to social media is that, oh, but if I don't have a follow, like, do I need to put a lot of work in the beginning for that my posts are being seen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do recommend when you set up your profile that you take some time to connect with the people that you already know are on that platform, your
Mm,
colleagues, maybe your students. Create a small audience for yourself in the beginning. But I have seen posts go viral and reach thousands and thousands of people with 50 followers. And I've
right.
seen posts go viral with, 60,000 followers. And it doesn't always make a difference how many followers you have for how much people have the opportunity to engage with it. The
Mm,
second point I have about that is that when you set up your profiles, if you don't post anything at all, which is common, if you don't post anything at all, when people come to see your profile to see if they should follow you or not, they might decide, oh my goodness, this person is not active on their account. I'm just going to follow them on LinkedIn where I know they have a profile, and I'm not going to follow them here on Instagram. But that person on Instagram may be hoping that more people will follow them and give them a reason to post. And it's
right.
like, it's a two-way street. It takes you being open that you want to create community here or to be part of the community here. You don't have to create it yourself.
Right.
Or you have to be actively talking about it in person and inviting people to come connect with you. Say, my Instagram's coming. It's coming. So follow me. There's nothing there now. But if you
Right.
follow me, I'll be sharing there soon. So there's options for you.
Mm,
And it kind of depends on how you like to network and how you like to connect with people.
mm. Yeah, that's really good, good advice. And I think also just being mindful of that. I mean, also from my own experience, I can say when you start out on a new social media platform, and just recently I happen to have started on a couple new platforms that I haven't previously been on. And it does feel really difficult when you start out at zero and you have to like build, like you have to post and you don't like get replies or likes or whatever, like the currency is or whatever you're looking for. And, or it's just like family and friends, not really the collaborators who we're hoping to reach. Um, that does feel really tough, but also I know from having built, in my case, Twitter to quite a large following, it like gets so much easier after like you just have to get through like the first initial thing, and depending what your goals are, you may not even want to grow your platform to like multiples of thousands of followers. But
Yeah.
yeah, just setting it up, and even if you don't get any likes, replies, or any engagement on your post, just keep going for a bit. Um, and then it will just yeah take off on its own.
Yeah, I've worked with scientists who are starting their account from scratch, one who'd never been on any social media platform before, so everything was new. And I've worked with scientists who've been on social media for a long time, who maybe have been active posting, but who want to get better, more efficient, make it more meaningful for them. And so I think that wherever you are in your social media journey, know that there's room for growth. There's room to make it better fit your lifestyle. And there's also room to feel like your voice is more your own. That's the biggest thing that I hear from
Mm,
people starting out. I don't know if this sounds like me. I don't know what does sound like me. And
mm,
part of that's just getting used to a new form of writing. I'm a creative writer. That's my background, and my training. And so when I think about writing, changing the place of writing and changing the format of writing does change how we hear, experience, and feel our voice. And so that's a big thing that you might encounter if you're just starting out on accounts as well.
good point. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit of a learning journey and yeah, just as everything. I guess go there with a lot of self-compassion and just see things as data points and then adapt. And I can also say from my own experience, it has taken me some time to feel like, and I don't think I'm yet there at like 100% authentic, or what you feel like, oh, this is really, really me now when I'm on social media. I think this is really, really hard to do. Like some people get good at this, but this is really hard to do. But I feel like so much more like that
Mm,
recently after years and years and years. So like it is
that's
really
so
hard. And
happy.
people still find it useful, right? It's also good to remember, like even when you feel, oh, I'm like just sharing this like little sliver, like people just get this like little sliver of myself and they don't really get the whole me. But it's still really useful for them. And you never know also how the people perceive you. So they may perceive you
Yeah.
in a
Actually, that's a
different way.
really good point because when you were talking about earlier, when you're starting out on a social media platform, maybe the people you're connected to are mostly family and friends. Actually, that's a holdup that I find a lot of the professors that I work with have. It's not that they don't like their family and friends. They do. They want to talk with them. But there is an assumption or feeling oftentimes that those people won't care, that those people won't understand or maybe can't understand, and therefore that they're not actually the right audience for you. But each of those professors that I've worked with who experienced feelings like that have found once they did start feeling and intentionally including that audience in how they shared on maybe Facebook, if that's where they're most connected with
Mm,
people, it was shocking how many people showed that they cared because that scientist took an extra sentence or two to explain any jargon or help them feel
mm,
like more the story of why their research was important to them. And so I really think that there's opportunity when you're starting out, especially to better kind of like hone your science communication by
mm.
connecting with your family and friends in that way. I really think that that is a valuable test for yourself to see where your comfort level is in terms of sharing and who's able to see that.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really fun way, and I think really important way to train that science communication, to really get good at explaining your research to a wider audience. And you'll be surprised, I think, that even scientists, other scientists, other researchers, even sometimes in the same discipline, in the same field, they also need maybe a bit of a less super jargony experty explanation than you may think. So just a little side note. Um, all right. So we've talked a lot about like kind of getting started on social media, how much time to invest, all those things. So what are the things that someone could post on social media when you are a researcher, scientist, academic?
There's like a billion things. And so I think what might be helpful is if we narrow that categorization down to talking about your publication, if that's okay.
Mhm.
And then we can
Yeah.
broaden it out afterwards.
Yeah, no, sounds
Um,
good.
but what I want to say about publications is that you can talk about it before. you've actually started writing, while you're writing, and after it's published, and that those posts may look different from each other and serve different purposes. So, a lot of hesitations that people have before they start writing or while they're in the writing phase is that they don't want anyone to steal their research. And I completely understand that, especially with AI. Like things are happening faster and more like a wider scope than in the past. So I understand that fear. There are things you can talk about in terms of what you're writing about that do not include the details that protect the argument that you're working to make in
Mm,
your article. So you can write about who you're collaborating with. That's a great one. You can write about the general topic of what you are researching and why this research needs to be out in the world. You can talk about who you're hoping to help. And you can
mm,
talk about what the process or feelings are like of the actual writing without talking about the substance of your argument, if that feels safer for you. So there's lots of options to talk about your writing before it's actually with the publisher. And I
mm,
encourage you to do that because it really gets people excited. It might bring on new collaborators for future projects. It might also give you some research or materials that can even enhance your submission. So, thinking about your writing as part of this larger community can also help bring the community to be excited about your
mm,
writing. And I love that. So, talking about your publication before it's out is amazing and can really help people feel that emotional connection with what you're sharing. But talking about it after, the vast majority of scientists and researchers that I talk to will share it, but they'll share it once. And it's kind of it's kind of like, oh no, I did that. And like that's the maximum amount of self-promotion that I could do. So maybe I'll share it again in like, a month or something, but that's it. Like that's it. And thinking about that second post is actually quite hard for them. So if you're feeling like you're not sure, or if you've posted about something only once in the past, the things that I want you to know are that there's many things that you could talk about from your article that could make a good post. Things you don't even need to write from scratch. You can probably pull quotes that may turn into a good post.
mm,
Second is that there's not a timeline or time limit for when you can talk about your article. If the research is still relevant to the people that it helps or helpful for researchers who are continuing that topic with new experiments, I want you to understand that your article can still help them. And
mm,
your publication, when you share it, can still be valuable for the people who have opportunity to learn about it. And because there's such a huge volume of publications that are coming out every week, it may give people who needed your article the first time another opportunity to experience it. This is also really helpful for people who are writing articles that might be used in a course or class or some kind of other training, because that is oftentimes when people are putting together those kinds of syllabi. So
mm.
being able to talk about your course in more ways than one and also more than once, more often, or for a longer period of time is really like a mindset shift for scientists. And that's what I encourage you to experiment with when it comes to your writing on social media.
If you don't want to procrastinate anymore when you need to write a research article, if you want to get rid of the feeling of overwhelm because your backlog of data that isn't published is just like growing and growing, then I have the perfect solution for you, our free training for researchers who want to publish in a calm and steady way. It's an hour-long training and it's interactive, and I will walk you through my entire system to get published in top-tier journals using a streamlined writing process. Just go to researcherswritingpodcast.com/free and start watching, well, for free. So that's researcherswritingpodcast.com/free. Let's get back to the episode. Ah, these are really good points. Yeah, so sharing about your publication, about the article you're writing, before you're writing it, while you're writing it, after you're writing it, and also once it's published, you can share the link or information about it more than just once or twice. Yeah, super. Also, I think I was super uncomfortable with this at the beginning, but you can also kind of reshare your own posts on
Mm.
social media. Like I do this all the time now, shamelessly just hitting repost on my own reshare or whatever it is called on a platform on my own post. Maybe the next day, or maybe a few days
Mm.
later, or just to maybe hit a different time zone, or someone who wasn't online then, like just also really keep it in mind. Like depending on the platforms, these posts don't live so long. Like there's not such a big span of time for people to see them if they didn't happen to be online when you shared it.
That is so true. And actually, one thing that you mentioned was that you can share the link when you post. And I just wanted to mention for everyone who's listening that when you do share the link in the initial post, on most platforms, like I think every platform except for Blue Sky and maybe the YouTube community, when you share a link in your post, it actually shows your post to fewer people. And so
Mm.
when we're thinking about maximizing or like making the most of the time that we spend on that one social media post, if you only have that 10 minutes per month, right?
Mhm.
I want to make sure that you actually don't share the link in that initial post, but you can excuse me, you can reply to your initial post with the link and any more information that you want to add.
Mm.
So that's really going to help you be able to reach more people than if you were just sharing the link in that post.
Ah, that's a really good tip. Yeah, in Blue Sky, it's not like that. Blue Sky doesn't deprioritize posts with a link, which is nice in a way. But all other platforms do. Um, well, now that we're talking kind of about like platform specific tips, um, shall we chat about like, well, which platform is best? Like, where should I go? Should I go? We mentioned LinkedIn, we mentioned Instagram, we mentioned Blue Sky. There's Threads now as well, which is also a Meta platform, so same as Facebook and Instagram. There used to be Twitter, but Twitter, I guess, it's uh, not so recommended anymore. Anything else, and what is kind of your take on it, Jennifer?
Yeah, I would say that as before, like academics are on every social media platform, and even though Twitter is dead, like academics are still there. They haven't deleted their accounts, but people are kind of less engaged overall. Like people are not putting as much maybe effort or energy into social media overall as they used to. And that's kind of across the board, not just with scientists, but scientists are finding new places. Like they're not relying on Twitter anymore for their conversations or their
Mm.
communities. And a lot of the response to that has been shifted to Blue Sky, shifted to LinkedIn. Some people are still trying out Mastodon. And I see a lot of private communities as well, in the sense that
Mm.
people are creating Slack communities, Discord communities, new opportunities for groups of like-minded people to engage and connect. So I want you to think about the kind of communities that you want to be in, because social media may look like being on Blue Sky for you, but it may also look like being more engaged in the Slack community that's for your specific area of research. Maybe that's created by a scholarly organization or an institution or a research center, but there are sometimes options that are even more
Mm.
specific to your field. In terms of general social media platforms, where should people go? I always recommend having a filled out LinkedIn profile. Whether you're going to post on LinkedIn or scroll or be active on there at all, filling out your LinkedIn profile is kind of my number one priority for scientists. The second thing that I encourage you to do is to explore other platforms without feeling like you need to invest all your time or energy there, without feeling like you need to be on this platform. Because the truth is, academics are everywhere.
Mm.
Academics are on YouTube, they're on WhatsApp, they're on WeChat, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on Threads, they're on X still. So they're on all of these platforms, and that doesn't mean that it's easy to get connected with them in those places. Some make it easier than than others. And some platforms are improving that experience as well. Instagram, just a few years ago, had basically no search capabilities. If you wanted to try
Hmm.
and find someone who had the same subject or research area as you, it would actually have been quite difficult unless they were actively using hashtags. Now, it's become more full text searchable in the sense that it's showing up profile bios, it's showing up some things that are in posts, and you may be more likely to find the community that you want there than you might have experienced in past years. But what I find is that it's really not about who you connect with there. It's about your own feelings and experiences with the platform. And so for people who are joining a platform like Instagram that has many, many features and many types of content to share, that can sometimes feel overwhelming. So, what you mentioned earlier about giving yourself grace, giving self compassion when you are starting a new platform, it makes a huge difference for you because you are going to find people that you want to connect with and be in community with. Maybe not all the people, right?
Mm.
Because people choose where they want to spend their time. And even if they're on a platform, they have a profile there, maybe they post there occasionally, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that person is going to see what you share. So when you choose a platform, I really want you to think about yourself and to almost be a little selfish in that
Mm.
sense of what do I like? What don't I like? What does feel like it's going to fit into my lifestyle? Because if Threads or Blue Sky, a very text-based platform, is easier for you, like stick with that. You don't have
Mm.
to reinvent the wheel in order to be an active presence on social media as a scientist.
Mm. Yeah, like I think it very much used to be the case when Twitter was still a thing. I still call it Twitter, but it's called X now.
I
Um,
call it Twitter too.
that there was like an academic Twitter. Like it was, I think, pretty clear cut that if you're an academic and you're gonna invest time on social media, I mean, my personal recommendation would have always been, unless you really have something against it and something else works so much better for you, I would have said maybe join Twitter because that's really like the community was such just so huge. Um, but nowadays, so since it became X, and then since Trump got reelected, like a lot of academics did either leave or haven't been active there anymore. And I actually myself haven't been active on there in quite a while. Um, and then scientists and researchers and academics were kind of like, I think, searching for other places. And I feel like now, as you said, like there's just so many to choose from. Um, I do have a feeling, and I'm not sure if that's, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I do have a feeling that Blue Sky does have some potential. I think scientists really love it. I mean, maybe even, I don't know if that's true, but I feel like the physical scientists, especially, I see more maybe physical scientists there than social scientists, but I don't know. It's too early to say. It's still small, um, in comparison, the community. But there seems to be a little bit of a boom. I mean, we're recording this in December 2024, so just for reference, these things can change. Um, but yeah, I have a feeling that maybe Blue Sky is becoming a bit of a new hub because it's very much like Twitter, but it does have some advantages, I think, to getting started. Um, you aren't on Blue Sky yourself, Jennifer, right?
No, I'm not, but many of my clients are, and they've also been enjoying it too. So I
That's
do
good to
recommend
hear.
Blue Sky for people. I just because I'm not joining myself doesn't mean that I don't recommend it to other scientists.
Mm. I think what's really nice there is the starter packs. Like, I think just for getting started on a platform, like, I've never had such an easy start on a platform because they have starter packs where they um, kind of, it's a list of people to follow in a given field with a given characteristic. So, for example, there is starter packs for Black scientists, for Black women scientists, for Black women cancer researchers, like, and it gets more and more granular. And that's just so nice to build up your like timeline, people to follow, and you can just hit follow all, okay, you can scroll through the list and really curate your timeline like super quickly, which normally on platforms just takes a long time, I think, to make your
Mm.
feed into something that you actually enjoy.
That's really interesting. Yeah, there's some things that I've done on other social media platforms and that I've recommended for my clients to help you have feeds that you enjoy. And I love that Blue Sky gives you that opportunity to find people right off the bat whose content you're curious about or are interested in seeing. But even on Twitter, like one of the things that I did was I muted everyone's retweets. I was like, I
Mhm.
care about what you have to say, but if you're retweeting something like that won't be the most exciting thing on my feed. So just muting everyone's retweets significantly improved my experience there. And when I mentioned
Interesting.
that to one of my clients on LinkedIn, they actually went through and they muted some people who they wanted to be connected with, but whose posts weren't actually aligned with what they needed and wanted to see in their feed. So there's ways that you can choose selective feeds on Blue Sky that only have, people in a certain field or that you've created a list for. And I love that there's different options to control what you see. When I think about that, though, I tend to think about scrolling, and that's something that my clients really want to avoid. So
Mm.
investing in a good feed and the people that you want to follow is great, but it can also be a little bit of a trap, especially if you're
Right.
just getting started, in the sense that when you're on social media as a scientist, what I'd rather you be focused on is connecting with one person you know or
Mhm.
posting in a way that can invite people who also care about what you're posting about it to connect with you. It's a little bit more invitation focused than that kind of curation of feed or
Mhm.
followers. And that's more because I would say I've never seen that you need a massive audience in order to make the kind of impact that scientists tell me that they want. And when they come back and they're like, oh, yeah, that post, it didn't actually reach more than 100 people, but one of those people ended up joining my project because they were such a good fit and they were so
Right.
excited that they knew to reach out to me. So I really want you to think about what's going to work for your lifestyle. And if you're not actually someone who wants to spend time on social media, maybe scrolling and curating your feed isn't as important to you as feeling that writing practice of sharing, getting that down.
Good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Um, and in terms of sharing, I also think it's worth mentioning perhaps hashtags,
Mm.
how we can use hashtags strategically. Do you have any tips around that at all?
Yeah, so in terms of hashtags, there's a few tips that I can think of right off the bat. One is that hashtags are really better at the end of a post. Even though you might see really good posts that have them inside the post, it's actually really hard for screen readers and people with disabilities to then understand what you're saying in the post. So if you can move your hashtags to the end and then use camel case where you're capitalizing the capital letters of each post. So if you're doing hashtag academic threads, it would be
Mhm.
a capital A and a capital T, so people know that academic and threads are two separate words. So that's more just best practices for
Mm.
hashtags. But in terms of using hashtags to help people find your research, a lot of people know of the really general hashtags like science threads, academic threads, or maybe if you're in a special field like chemistry, like a very general hashtag. And those hashtags can help you reach a wide number of people, but it's kind of like turning on a diffused flashlight in the sense that like anyone could kind of find your post. When you combine that with a more specific hashtag, um, I'm trying to think of one, like moral artificial intelligence. That's one of my clients' researches.
Mhm.
Moral artificial intelligence or hashtag moral AI, that is going to reach a much more specific audience. And so if you can combine the more general hashtag with a more specific one, it can actually help you reach more of the right audience for your post. Gives people the opportunity to share it widely, but also for that community you're most hoping will actually see the publication that you're writing about. to
Mm.
see that too. And the other thing is that hashtags are sometimes not as important as tags. Actually, tagging the organizations that you are collaborating with, or the institutions, or the research funders may actually help your research reach more people than if you had used hashtags or only hashtags.
That's a really good point because also institutions and organizations love retweeting when you share. So when you mention them
Because
and
it makes
thank
it
them,
easier. It makes it
yeah,
easier for them. Less work, less work.
yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Tagging is such a good little hack on social media.
But
Um,
it also can take time. Like actually looking up people's tags to tag them can take time. So
mm,
actually, if you know that there's people that you might be tagging often, creating a little document or a spreadsheet for
mm,
yourself is really helpful, especially because, as one of my senior academic clients learned last week, people use different handles on different platforms. And so even though you
right.
know the platform for LinkedIn or for Instagram, it might be different on Blue Sky or Threads. And so maybe a spreadsheet might be helpful for you. And I encourage you to start that early. Start it now if you don't have one already, in case it's helpful for you in the future.
Oh, that's a really good point. I was actually thinking way earlier in our conversation when we were talking about w- like kind of the whole process of like researching or like trying to think about what to post about. Um, I was thinking as you are like kind of writing your article, like it could actually maybe be a part of this process so that you're not after the article is written, sit down and think about all these things. But as you're developing your article, somewhere in your system, which hopefully you have a system for that, you already, write down all these things. Maybe you already write down all the handles of your collaborators, things like that, of the organization funding you, anything you may need later on for like a social post.
Mm. Maybe we should team up and create a resource that you can share with people in
Yeah.
your program. And that way they have like a take home, like a
Oh, that's a really
downloadable.
nice idea. Yeah, let's do that.
That'd be fun.
Cool.
Let's do that in the new year.
Yeah, cool. Um, Lovely. So we talked a lot about the different platforms and some specific tips. Um, I have one more question, or maybe a couple more questions, two more questions, I think. One just occurred to me as you were speaking about accessibility. And you mentioned already using camel case and hashtags. Are there any other like top things? I mean, we don't need to go through like a whole accessibility guide because I know there's a lot of things to
There's
know.
so many things,
It's
but
and it
yeah.
is difficult. I really acknowledge it's difficult, and I think like it's hard to be perfect. Um, but what are like sort of the top three things to do to
Yeah.
make it accessible, to make your social media presence accessible to everyone?
So one thing is using special fonts or characters, something where you have to go and like copy it and paste it in order for it to look pretty or something. Don't do that. Like when it's read out on a screen reader, it sounds like garbledy-gook, and they're
Yeah.
like naming the font before each letter in order to get
Oh
to the end.
gosh.
So it sounds crazy. Another one is emojis. Scientists love emojis, and I love that there's so many more scientist emojis. But when we have emojis throughout a sentence or at the start of a list, it can be really disruptive for people with screen readers. And then my third tip is that if you want to learn more about being accessible on social media, there is amazing research online that Alexa Heinrich, a higher ed communicator, created in order to help people around the world be more accessible with their social media. And she is amazing. It's accessible-social.com, I believe. And
We'll
it
share it in
is
the show notes, the proper link.
it's such a powerful resource for people. There's a little, quick download that you like a little checklist that you can download, but there's also much more extensive and detailed recommendations if that's something that you care about for your science communication. There's many things you can learn to improve.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. Um, okay, that brings me to my last question, which is, well, really going full circle now because we started talking about feelings, um, at the beginning. And now I'm thinking, okay, what if actually I want to share about my publications, I want to share about my writing, but I'm not really doing it, despite my best intentions. And I think maybe the reason is I'm not really feeling good about it, or there's something mindset wise that is keeping me from doing it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, it could be something that you can talk with a friend or a colleague about because even just voicing that out loud sometimes
Mm,
clues you in where your feelings are actually disconnecting with how your audience might receive what you want to share. But another thing is that it sometimes takes that leap of faith to decide that you're going to do it anyway, that you're going to sit in the discomfort slightly. And you can make a decision after it's posted. If you post it and you're like, no, 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 that was wrong. I feel uncomfortable. Please delete it. Like, it's okay. But oftentimes, when people sit in that discomfort, they do make the post the next day they realize actually, more people engaged than I thought no one was going to engage, but two people that I know and care about said something to me and that made a difference. Or it reached more people than I expected it to. I didn't know that that 10 minutes of my time was going to actually reach, over 1,000 people with my research. Maybe this is something that I could become more comfortable with over time. The comfort level that we feel before posting, it doesn't always align with the actual post itself. And I find that that's especially true if you're someone who has a sensitive research topic as a scientist.
mm,
That the fear of people's reaction may be really what's holding you back. And sometimes that kind of safety or fear response is warranted. And so
mm,
I do want you to consider if social media is right for you. If when you post about things, the response is hate, the response is a lot of right-wing people telling you that your science is wrong when you and all the peer reviewers knew it was right.
mm.
Sometimes it's okay if you're not on that social media platform or on any social media platform. So I want you to think about your personal safety and your comfort level and to only take those risks or to experiment with your comfort level when it does feel safe to do so.
These are this is such good advice. Also, what I learned over the years is that it's totally okay to block someone,
Mm.
um, to mute someone, to block, to delete messages. Um, and yeah, and you don't have to be there. I love that, as a piece of advice. If this is not feeling good, you don't have to be on social media because it can be a rough place depending on who you are, depending on what you share about.
Yeah, and maybe this is a heavier topic, so feel free to cut this if you want to. But I want to mention that there are also people who find that blocking and muting isn't enough. And oftentimes, when they're experiencing hate, even if a lot of people report the person who's at fault, it may not result in a banning or suspension or even agreement with you that hate was involved. And that can be really disheartening. It can feel
Mhm.
really sad to be in that kind of situation. And I've seen that several times throughout
Mm.
my time working with scientists and professors on their social media. So I do want you to know that whatever feels best for you, whether it's staying on that platform, whether it's going private or choosing to really curate who sees and can't see your posts, there's options for you. But an option is always that you don't have to be on social media if it doesn't align with your personal safety or your goals.
Yeah, I mean, this is heavy, but really thank you for sharing that because I do think this is important to talk about. And honestly, um, probably we don't talk about this enough. So I'm really glad we are mentioning this. And I'm so, so glad we got to have this conversation and to learn from you. Where can people find you online? Like, if people now are who are listening are thinking, "Oh, I want to learn more about Jennifer. I want to learn more about what she does. Maybe I want to work with her." How can you help people, and where can they find you?
So, the best way to find the resources that I have about social media, websites, and online presence for academics is on theacademicdesigner.com, which is my website. You'll get links to my blog, podcast, and YouTube channel there. But I'm also on social media at Higher Ed PR. So, please feel free to connect with me. If you listen to the show, send me a message and let me know. And I really am so excited to share this for you because social media, even though we just talked about something heavy, is oftentimes a very hopeful experience for people. It's one that can be full of opportunity and that can really invite the things that you want for your research or for your team. There's so many opportunities to help people get connected with each other and to help you feel more a part of your community when you're on social media.
Oh, I love this. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and see you next time. Bye. If you would like to submit a question for me to answer on the podcast, please head to researcherswritingpodcast.com/question. That's researcherswritingpodcast in one word.com/question. And if you enjoyed this podcast episode, it would really mean the world to me if you could review it in your favorite platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever app you're using. The more reviews a show has, the more likely it will be shown to others who are looking for podcasts in the academic writing space. So thank you.